I know I should sleep, but the voices in my head go. I know I should sleep, but the voices in my head go.
Outside of Portland! Outside of Portland!
I know I should sleep, but the voices in my head go.
424 ain't nothing but a bitch!
I know I should sleep, but the voices in my head go.
We're about to go on a run here through D.C. and show you what it looks like now that the Trump administration has sent in the National Guard and federalized our police force. Didn't even get to start the run. I'm on my block. We've got police right here. This is Border Patrol, and then these are some unmarked vehicles, as well as more Border Patrol. Now following that group of cars, we're about 4 blocks in. All right, just got to Union Station. Here is what the scene looks like. Kind of a weird scene here, but we've got 3 of these military trucks sitting behind me. Now I'm headed in the direction of the Capitol. There's a bunch of whistles blowing, as well as a bunch of sirens coming up the street, it sounds like. I'm not sure what building this is, but it turns out it's megaphones and pots and pans, and they're trying to disturb whatever building this is. Just to be 100% clear, none of these videos are meant for like fear-mongering, not trying to scare anyone. I just simply want to show you what it looks like, and obviously draw your own conclusions. I'm not here to necessarily put out a narrative, but at the same time, if there is something that is blatantly obvious and a threat to people's safety and other DC residents, I'm going to call it out in the video, even if it's my opinion. I just circled back to head back to Martin Luther King Jr. Library now that it is shut down to see what happens. And in front of me, I have about 8 agents along with police. We got Border Patrol, Secret Service, Homeland Security Investigations, and one that just says federal agent. There's a group of Border Patrol and MPD behind me. They just stopped 2 men for smoking weed, which to my knowledge is legal in DC. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. Just in the few blocks that I walked alongside those federal agents, the number of scared reactions that I saw from people of color that were walking just down the street minding their business was insane. Just to give you an example, a black mother and her son was walking down the street. The second they turned the corner and saw the agents walking towards them, she immediately grabbed her son's hand and told him, when you see these people out here walking around, you're gonna hold my hand because I want them to know that you're mine and you're not out here causing trouble because we don't want any trouble with them. It was truly just so disheartening to see. I'm popping by the White House right now just to see if there's any protests going on. Not much going on, just seemed like tourists. I'm at the George Washington University campus now. There was heavy presence here tonight. Not so much anymore. There's a couple individuals hanging out by some of the tents that are normally here, so I'm gonna go see what's being said there. So this is right here in front of some of the tents here at Washington Circle by GW campus. Again, I don't necessarily want to show faces, but one person was picked up here by a shelter van that took him to a local shelter, as opposed to being surrounded here in Washington Circle by a bunch of federal agents. It sounds like there's a lot of confusion between the different agencies and who's in charge of what. For example, at that location, DC police was putting up a bunch of notices on all the tents, letting people know that they do have to leave the area eventually. Some agencies showed up and honored that and basically moved on with their night. Sounds like some of the other agencies would show up and basically ignore the notice and start asking people, hey, do you have somewhere you can go right now? You gotta go. It wasn't forceful, but I'm sure it's definitely causing some confusion amongst the unhoused people here. I was just in Wawa, and 2 DC police officers were in there talking to each other. I listened to them as they chatted amongst themselves when they realized that they got the official notification that they are allowed to ask immigration status of people that they detain. They looked at each other and immediately shook their heads, and then one of them said, that ain't my job. That just tells me that the police here even feel like it's an overreach. All right, now that's all I got for tonight, so good night.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Target CEO stepping down due to the boycotts?
It's a pretty obvious charade on Target's part, if you ask me.
How is it a charade?
Well, for one, he's staying on as the executive chair of Target, which is arguably the more senior position. And, you know, when you're dealing with large corporations like Target, part of the job of the CEO is basically to be the fall guy for when things go wrong at the company. That's where you get the golden parachute term from. You know, these CEOs that are being fired or leaving in supposed disgrace, but they're getting like $200 million exit bonuses. It's because they're doing their job by leaving, right? They get a bunch of money and the company looks like it's listening to whatever the public's mad about. If Target actually cared about his performance, they wouldn't be leaving him on as executive chair.
What is the executive chairman?
Well, it differs a little bit from company to company, but the executive chair is basically the head of the company's board of directors, which is the board that the CEO answers to and that deals with the investors. And it's one of the most senior leadership positions in any large corporation like Target. A lot of the times it gets paid the same or more than the CEO does, and is often filled by former CEOs or people who have brought a lot of success to the company.
So is there any indication at all that the boycotts actually worked?
Well, the fact that he stepped down is something, right? He wouldn't have done that if they didn't think that they needed to at least make a token attempt at looking like they were sorry. But I don't think that this is an indication that like things are over yet, right? This is just the first step. So the boycotts definitely need to continue until there is actual change at the company.
Donald Trump is the physical embodiment of all of America's sins. He's
Yeah, I agree
sloppy,
completely.
right? He's sloppy. He's unkempt. Everything about him is false. His hair is a pretense of non-baldness. He's old, but his followers try to pretend that he looks like Superman. He's a terrible businessman and a failure who gets to fake success because he's white, so banks keep lending him money even when he's failing. His father scoops money out of his siblings' inheritance to give him when he fails. He's a fuck up, but he's able to be a success because white America keeps saying, no, 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 that guy's what success looks like. He's only a success on that TV show because when he was at his brokest, he gets hired to be on The Apprentice. His boardroom couldn't even be used on The Apprentice, and I found this out in my first my Trump book because it was so shoddy and unkempt. I went in Trump Tower in the 80s. It was tacky and sad. His marriage is a fraud. Melania clearly won't even touch him. The last time she let him touch her, they had Barron. Clear that he ain't touching her now. He doesn't believe in marriage. He doesn't have morality. He got 3 baby mamas, 5 children. Everything about him is a lie. He's not a Christian, but Christians love him. But he embodies the greed, the shamelessness, the lasciviousness of capitalism. And now also to your main, and I think really important point, the mediocrity. He could never be JFK. He's not handsome. He's not suave. He's not brave. He was never a war hero like JFK. He has none. Even RFK can never be JFK. None of these people stand up to JFK's legacy. But he can only get a theater named after him by stealing JFK's. Melania can only get a ballroom, the Kit Kat Club lady he met at the Kit Kat Club. We don't know who introduced him, but Jeffrey Epstein was around. She can only get a ballroom named after her by being married to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he said himself, he could never get a Kennedy Center honor. Unworthy. But he can get one now. He can steal one because he owns a Kennedy Center. They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't originally invent anything more than they ever were able to invent good music. We black folk gave y'all country music, hip hop, R&B, jazz, rock and roll. They couldn't even invent that, but they have to call a white man the king. Because they couldn't make rock and roll. So they have to stamp the king on a man whose main song was stolen from an overweight black woman. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Think about the lyrics. Why would a man, you ain't nothing but a hound dog, lying all the time? That's a song a woman sings about a man. He stole that song and made it a hit because he couldn't invent rock and roll. Even the Beatles knew that. They were like, we didn't invent this shit. We're singing black people's music. The Stones admitted it. So my whole thing is, when you invent a country where you don't tell white people that they need to innovate, even Elon Musk didn't invent them damn Teslas. 2 other men invented it. He just bought it. And so when you tell them you don't have to be excellent, you just have to be white, you will get mediocrity. You will get mediocrity because they're not asking white people to be great. They're not asking them to be great. They're telling them you can be the opposite of great and be defense secretary. You can be the opposite of great and be Homeland Security Secretary. They're telling white people a lie so that they will believe that they have achieved, when all they're doing is thieving greatness from other people. And I actually think that is a shame for white America. Because if you raised your kids that way, you would get brats, you would get monsters, you would get demons you don't even want at Thanksgiving. But we're raising an America that is mediocre on purpose because we don't want to tell Donald Trump that he is a fucking failure. But he is.
Good morning, New Yorkers. How about we also propose, if we have a 10-cent increase, a 10% decrease of your salaries to help contribute to the costs? Because none of you are actually reliant on MTA transit. You drive blacked out SUVs. Some of you don't live in the city at all. And to those of you who are up here respectability politicking against the interests of everyday people who you look like and identify with, who you're in community with, oh wait, you're not, because you're not working class people, maybe actually listen to the people who are struggling. I had to post about this on the internet last night on TikTok because this is poorly advertised and it's hard to find. And if what you were doing was fair and ethical, you wouldn't have to have these meetings during working hours where working people cannot be here advocating for themselves. Would you want people advocating against your time? No, not at all. And this morning, there were hundreds of thousands of comments, views, where people were saying, wow, had no idea this was even happening, but I disagree with what's happening because the Long Island Railroad system is too expensive. Coming from Jersey to Brooklyn costs $25. People are getting hit with double fares. What exactly are you doing for the people? Because it seems like you're moving within the interest of your bureaucracy, and if what you were doing was fair and ethical, you wouldn't need a police state to put a barrier in between us and you. You could actually talk to the people. You could talk to the people in the streets without fearing for your lives. And that's no threat. That's just the reality. Because you, sir, are not writing the MTA. I know that for a fact. Neither are you, neither are you, neither are you. You're not relying on it. You can laugh all you want.
As a reminder, speakers may not be engaging in
I'm reclaiming
conduct
some of my
that
time
disrupts
then.
an orderly conduct.
Okay, I'll take 10 more seconds then. It's not disorderly conduct, and no one should have to be polite to satiate the egos of people who are not actually experiencing the challenges that we are
Conclude
experiencing.
your remarks. Thank you.
Y'all are hurting the people of New York. Shame on all of you.
As a reminder to all the speakers that will be speaking next, speakers shall address their remarks to the chair or meeting host and shall not make personal, impertinent, insulting, or slanderous statements about any member or the MTA board or staff, or about other members of the public, as well as speakers may not use profanity or vulgar language, threaten violence, or otherwise engage in conduct that disrupts the orderly conduct of this meeting. If done so, you will be muted and your time will be up.
Discriminated against her by asking her to move her chair in a group workout class. She posted nearly 20 minutes of the encounter on Facebook before the Y ended up calling the cops to get her out.
All of it led to a protest outside of the community center. ABC 13's Sarah Weitzman investigates the confrontation.
This is the second time that they have tried to get me to move, and I have told them that I am not moving. I got here first. Now this man is telling me I'm going to move, but he's not going to tell this lady to move.
No, because
she got here after I got here.
I got him online. Call 911.
Call 911. Now they're going to call 911.
That's the police.
So let them call 911. They're getting ready to call the police.
Ma'am, you do realize you...
How about that? All right, Facebook, I want you to know that they are talking about calling the police because they want this Caucasian lady that's sitting beside me
to my race.
wants me to move.
Ma'am, it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with race at all.
Honey, you live with me, so why don't you move back, honey? Okay?
Ma'am, is there a specific reason as to
Honey?
why you want to specifically be in this
Honey,
area?
honey, you're my husband, so you need to stay out of this, okay? Baby, you need to stay out of this. Honey, you need to stay out of this, okay? You need to stay out of this. This is between me. This is a principal thing. This is a principal thing. They brought my husband up here. They thought that my husband is supposed to say something to cause me to move. I'm not moving. They want me to move for Miss Karen right here.
I'm not Karen, thank you very much.
Since I don't know your name, they want me to move for
I'm
Miss
Mrs. McAdams.
They want me to move for Miss Karen.
I'm not Karen, I told you, ma'am.
So I'm not moving.
This is how I know that the YMCA chair incident with the black woman and the white woman was fueled by racism, because as the cops continued to come into the class to trespass this black woman who has a membership to the studio, the fucking instructor continued to instruct the class. The class went on as this altercation happened. And as a group fitness instructor who's coached over 1,300 classes, when there is an actual emergency, you stop class. I've had to stop class twice in my career. Once was for a medical emergency. We had to stop class. And the second was from the ceiling in my studio caving in from a water leak. And we had to stop class. And these were actual emergencies that I stopped the class. And if the police were coming into my class, I would stop it. But that's not what the issue was. There was no medical emergency. There was no violent acts. Besides that fucking old white bitch acting like a teenager, acting like a child to this black woman. And it really is just disgusting, because the staff themselves said the only reserved seat goes to the instructor. Therefore, there should not be arguments over seats. And that is just how I know the whole incident, the whole conflict was fueled by racism.
What do you want help with?
After more than a year of grief and pain, some hope for the family of Sonya Massey. Her killing by Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson was motivation for change.
Today, I'm thinking of Sonya Massey.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed her namesake bill into law last week. Law enforcement agencies are now required to thoroughly review potential officers' past conduct.
Officers with histories of serious disciplinary issues should not be serving in those capacities in our communities.
Grayson's history included 2 DUIs and a documented record of poor judgment, lying on police records, and dangerous behavior while on the job. He's charged with first-degree murder and has pleaded not guilty.
Could this bill have saved your cousin, Sonya?
I think so. It would have prevented Sean Grayson from even being hired by the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department.
For Massey's cousin Sante, this new law is just the beginning.
The culture of policing in the United States really needs to be changed. This is my family mission from now on. I want to do this work for the rest of my life.
And Anna Schechter joins us now. How unique is this law in Illinois?
This law is unique because it applies a sort of radical transparency to the hiring process. It's the only law in the books that requires all previous employers, law enforcement or not, to provide full personnel files, unredacted, within 2 weeks to really give a full picture of the candidate. And what this case really highlights is the importance of community policing programs, many of which have been rolled back, their funding pulled by the Department of Justice in recent months. But those programs build rapport and trust between police and the communities that they serve.
Anna Schechter, thanks so much.
As I look around the room of white men, I think about my dad. And I love the head shake. And I love the nod. Because this is about racism. And if you can't hear it from them, then hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats.
Hey everyone, this is State Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith. I'm near downtown Orlando, and we have just discovered that the Florida Department of Transportation in the middle of the night has ripped the rainbow colors off of the city sidewalk outside of the Pulse nightclub, where 49 people were murdered in cold blood by hatred. This rainbow crosswalk was placed here by our community with approval from the state, not only to remember those 49 mostly LGBTQ people of color who were murdered here at this site, but also it was intended to keep pedestrians safe. So many visitors who have come to this site to pay their respects to those who were taken. And now the city has been vandalized. The state of Florida, in the middle of the night, secretly removed the rainbow crosswalk because they know what they did was wrong. The city's streets have been vandalized. This is a city road. This is a hostile act from the state of Florida against a city government. Not only was it illegal in how they vandalized this city property without their permission or consent, they also illegally denied the city of Orlando the opportunity for administrative appeal and the administrative process that is afforded to them in Florida law. I cannot believe the DeSantis administration would insult this community in this way by removing this rainbow crosswalk the way that they have done.
I teach high school. School just got out. I'm a block from the school and had to pull over because I'm so frustrated. But basically, one of our teachers is now going to be fostering one of our students because her parents just got deported. Just let that sink in. A minor's parents just got deported. She's homeless. DHS showed up to our school. We're her teachers. We love her. She's brilliant. She's kind. We're not going to let that happen to her. So one of us is fostering her now. I don't care about your political ideology. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on. This is not the way to handle immigration. Immigration has been an issue that has plagued America for so long, but this is not the answer. It's just not. And if you come into my comment section saying, oh, well, serves her right, her parents should know, I have no tolerance, I have no patience. This is a child who should have a bright future, and her parents are gone, and now she's living with one of her teachers. It's just absurd, and it's heartbreaking, and I do not believe that anybody in a desperate enough situation would do the exact same thing for their family, for their kid. I would, if it meant breaking the law for the future of my kid to get out of a desperate situation, I'd do it. Like, I don't care. This is just not the way to handle it. It's just, she's a child.
Things at Target keep getting worse and worse by the day. Target has now lost an astounding $12.8 billion over its rollback of DEI. The number of shoppers visiting Target has declined by over 2.5 million shoppers per month since February. And former shoppers are not remaining silent when it comes to their frustration over Target rolling back DEI. Target has had to now shut down the comment section in all of its posts on TikTok. Target's poor choice to end DEI is now even impacting their employees. Target announced today, due to weak sales and performance, that it is now going to cut its employees' bonuses down to 87% instead of 100%. If you're a Target employee and you don't like your work situation anymore, you could certainly apply at Costco. They announced 2 weeks ago that they are going to be increasing their employees' pay to up to $32.
I spoke with more than 250 firefighters. This list is made up of mostly men who are young, otherwise healthy, and now they're getting very sick. Over the course of about a year, I reviewed dozens of studies, years of internal documents. What I found was that a lot of these young firefighters are developing catastrophic illnesses related to smoke exposure. I was talking to people who are being told that they have precancerous nodules in their lungs, people who have had to leave this work in their 30s because their lungs got so damaged, people who have very serious cancer diagnoses. I was just in California shadowing some of these firefighters as they fought back what is currently the biggest fire of the year. And I had an N95 on the whole time. But wildfire crews are not given any kind of mask, and the Forest Service does not allow them to wear masks on the fire line. The Forest Service is the biggest agency doing wildfire work, and they also set standards across the industry. For a long time, people thought that wildfire smoke was benign, like a campfire. And then in 1988, there was this huge fire, and firefighters there made more than 10,000 visits to the medics for respiratory issues. The government investigated what was going on with wildfire smoke, and they found that it was full of carcinogens and other toxic chemicals. After the fires, the Forest Service asked its own researchers to investigate how to keep their workers safe. Again and again, researchers have come back with exactly the same recommendation: give these workers masks. I asked the Forest Service for comment, and they said that they don't recommend masks because firefighters could overheat. I've seen internal Forest Service documents where they're making pro-con lists for handing out respirators. On the pro side is protecting people's lungs, and on the con side is workers might work as much as 20% more slowly. Internal records suggest, and people have told me, that embracing masks would also require the Forest Service to admit how dangerous smoke really is, and that could have a range of financial repercussions. It could mean that the Forest Service would be on the hook for all of these medical conditions associated with smoke. The Forest Service might have a harder time recruiting for people for these very low-wage jobs, and they might also have to hire more workers to allow people to take breaks periodically from the smoke. It would be unthinkable at this point for a city firefighter to go into a burning building without a respirator on. And in other countries like Australia, Canada, Greece, they are now giving these wildfire crews masks. What a lot of these guys have told me is they really see themselves as public servants. They take huge pride in having gone out there and put their own lives on the line to protect other people and protect communities. And now they feel like they really weren't protected.
Y'all, every single person in America should watch this. And especially those whose actual expertise is exercise and caffeine pills, not slavery. Roll them.
Hey, y'all. I do not usually do these videos, but as a creator of the 1619 Project and someone who has studied the history of slavery for 3 decades, I could not let that viral CNN clip of Jillian Michael stand. I have to first state that the times are far too serious and dangerous for us to lend our platforms to harmful nonsense. It's simply irresponsible, with everything that's happening in this country, to have someone as credentialist as Jillian Michael on a major network show legitimizing the erasure of our history. Now, I know there have been some viral efforts to debunk her claim that somehow slavery was a side institution in the United States because less than 2% of white people own slaves. But even those efforts, while valiant, by embracing this right-wing framing, they still aren't really getting to it. You see, this is how numbers and data, though technically true, can also be lies. And this is why we can't let bad faith actors set the parameters of the debate or of our collective understanding. So please bear with me because this is a lot. Let's take the fewer than 2% of white people own slaves at face value, though we know that number is technically incorrect. And let's apply that standard to any other industry. What percentage of Americans own social media companies or technology companies such as Apple? It's a tiny percentage. I'm doubtful if it's even 1% of Americans. And yet no one would credibly argue that social media companies are not ubiquitous across American life, that they don't play a major influence on our political, social, and economic life in America. And in fact, what we know is that more than 70% of Americans use social media, though hardly any Americans own social media platform. There's a reason that the heads of Meta, Apple, and Amazon, Google, and X all took part in Trump's inauguration festivities, with several of them standing on the actual dais during Trump's inauguration. These men also happen to be amongst the wealthiest in the world and demonstrate how a small cadre of super wealthy men can have an outsized impact on American politics and culture. This is just critical thinking, y'all. So if we want to play the numbers game, the much more important measure is what percentage of Americans own slaves? No, but what percentage of those empowered did? So here we go. Before 1865, the end of slavery in the United States, 63% of U.S. presidents had been slave owners at some point in their lives. More than 1,800 members of Congress owned slaves, meaning between 1789 and 1819, more than half of the men elected to Congress each session were slave owners. What about the Supreme Court? 26 of this nation's first 30 Supreme Court justices were enslavers, and about half of all the Supreme Court justices before the Civil War were enslavers. So many Supreme Court justices were enslavers that if we added up all the Supreme Court justices coming all the way to this present court, 1 out of 4 of all Supreme Court justices in this nation's history were enslavers. I mean, let's just look at our money. All but one of the people on our cash currency engaged in African slavery. Look at the $1 bill, $2 bill, 10, 20, 50, 100. All these men engaged in slavery. It's weird that we didn't value all those non-slaveholding white people enough to put them on our money. The majority of the most powerful men in this country, the men who made the federal laws, interpreted the laws, and enforced the laws, built their wealth on African slavery. And I assure you, that number says much more about the country we inhabit than that 2%. But let's not stop there, because even limiting the boundaries of the conversation to those who owned other human beings is highly misleading. Much like technology today, slavery in the United States was a national endeavor that undergirded not just our political system, but our entire economy. During the height of slavery, it was not the Northeast, Boston or New York, but the Mississippi River Valley in the Deep South that had more millionaires per capita than anywhere in the nation. And the Confederacy, had it succeeded at being a separate country, would have been the 4th richest nation in the world when the Civil War started. Enslaved people in the U.S. produced 7/8 of the world's cotton supply, and slave-grown cotton constituted 50% of all U.S. exports, making it the #1 export in America. And the North was completely intertwined in slavery, so much so that at the start of the Civil War, New York City actually considered seceding from the Union because the economy of the nation's trade capital was so heavily reliant on slavery. White enslavers financed their operations through New York banks, protected their enslaved property through New York insurance companies, and transported their slave-grown cotton on New York ships, flooding $200 million into New York's economy every year. Enslaved people built the famous wall that Wall Street is named after. Famous companies such as Lehman Brothers are rooted in slavery. The Lehman Brothers began as cotton brokers in Alabama before moving to New York to help establish the New York Stock Exchange. Brooks Brothers made not only fine suits, but slave cloth outfits to clothe the enslaved. Domino Sugar dominated based on slave-grown sugar. As a result, by some estimates, New York received 40% of all U.S. cotton revenue. They didn't have to own the slaves to profit greatly from slavery. Northern states may have outlawed slavery, but they continued to profit off of slavery and the slave trade. We learn about the marvels of the Industrial Revolution, but that revolution was made possible not just by technology, but by cheap slave-grown cotton. Rhode Island outlawed slavery in 1787, but built its economy on the slave trade. 60% of all ships in the U.S., slave ships, left Rhode Island, and they spawned an entire enterprise to support these slave traders, shipbuilders, sailors, carpenters, rope makers. James DeWitt, he was a Rhode Island slave trader, and when he died in 1837, he was the 2nd richest person in America. I could go on and on, but this video is already long enough. I mean, I could talk about how our Ivy League universities either owned, hired, or invested in enslaved people. How places like Yale, for instance, are named after a slave trafficker, and Georgetown sold slaves it owned down south to avoid having to close its doors. I could talk about how, quote unquote, only 2% of white people owned slaves. By the time of the Civil War, the United States, the land of the free, had the largest enslaved population in the world. That the value of those enslaved people, that human property, was greater than all of this nation's factories, railroads, and banks combined. In other words, the United States economy and political systems were built in significant part by slavery. This is simply undeniable. Without slavery, our nation would be unrecognizable to us. We cannot let them choose the parameters of the conversation in order to obfuscate the truth. That is disinformation. And the times are too serious for us to proliferate a simplistic, unsophisticated, and childish understanding of the history of slavery in the United States, because they are using this mythology to justify erasing our history because they want to erase our rights.
Hi, my name is Taylor. You might know me as the person who drove from Missouri to Alligator Alcatraz, and I'm going to read you something I wrote. I've shared a lot on my social media about Alligator Alcatraz, both the concerning conditions within the facility and the effects on the land and the environment it occupies. Now I've shared about other facilities, particularly Camp East Montana in El Paso, Texas, nicknamed Santa Rita, where detainees from Alligator Alcatraz have been transferred en masse, and how concerning it is, particularly how the chaos and disorganization of the system is currently negating due process. This information comes from news sources, organizations, and directly from those affected, including families of detainees, with their consent. I will continue to share their experiences as long as I am requested to do so. But I have yet to really explain what you can do to help. Generally, here are some to-dos. 1. Boost. You can comment, like, share, save, or post whatever you want to this post, but also talk about it with your family, your friends, your neighbors. Unwaveringly champion empathy, humanity, stewardship of the land instead of extraction, and human rights. These conversations, this labor, is necessary and revolutionary. Share your own original and valuable thoughts on this. Make art, write, make documentaries. 2. Localize. There are now maps of ICE detention centers as they are built, because not all of them show up on the ICE databases, because not all of them are ICE facilities, and some people have already been detained in these facilities before they are even fully opened. If there is a detention center near you, think about going out there in person and see if others will go with you. If we coordinate, we can build localized teams to go out and gather information, be present, and document. Familiarize yourself with local laws on recording and documenting. Having a plethora of videos and photos of the facility and its activities has been crucial to supplying the evidence for the lawsuit led by the Miccosukee tribe and the Friends of the Everglades against Alligator Alcatraz. This lawsuit has primarily been focused on the impacts on the environment there, the effects on the water, the wildlife, and the earth itself. We know these facilities will each have impacts on the environment. How might your local environment be affected? Start threads in the comments below with your local detention center and area and see who replies. You could start with Santa Rita, a nickname for the El Paso Camp East Montana facility at Fort Bliss. See if others will join you. Take safety precautions and use the buddy system. 3. Research. If you like research, begin gathering as much information as you possibly can about the facilities near you, perhaps using a VPN. We especially need help with researching Santa Rita, where many people from Alligator Alcatraz have been sent. Research how people are beating this system. I've gotten more than one life-altering tip from TikTok. I'm happy to receive any information you get on any of my platforms at the link in my bio. 4. Collaborate. If you know any influencers, activists, politicians, or organizations who you think would be willing to help, tag them in this post, comment on their posts about it, tag me in their comment sections. I'm not an expert on this, but I'm offering myself as a communicator role, communicating information, listening to information, and getting information to the people who need it. If you have any platform at all, sharing lived experience along with what people can do is a role for you if you so choose it. You are welcome to use my content or coordinate with my sources directly if they consent. Thank you so much.
I hope you guys can hear this. That's 3 floors up, right? That's 3 floors up?
Yep, 3 floors up.
We're inside. Come meet us inside.
Do you have an idea for a chant for us?
Hey fam, I'm here on the floor of the Capitol because I am not free to leave. But I hear you. I hear you cheering "Let her out." And I so appreciate it because I know you're tired, you're fed up, just like me. And so I appreciate you taking a stand. Continue to resist. We don't have to take the bullies, we don't have to let them push us over. We can stand up against them. I'm drawing the line in the sand, and I'm glad that you are. Continue to resist and let them know that you won't back down and that you demand fair representation and fair maps. Thank you for standing in solidarity.
With all the negative that we have run in our game right now, I thought it might be a good idea for us to talk about pattern recognition. As much as I'm a historian, I also do pattern recognition. And one of the reasons I do that is because I can see patterns through history and I see patterns that spread out to now. I do believe at the end of the day that what's going on right now is an extinction event for the Christian nationalist, okay? The whiting of America. I think these people are having an extinction event. I think that's all the energy you're seeing. The only thing that gives me pause is it's still a cult. But I do know this, that Trump has the lowest approval ratings of anyone ever, including the people that did the president that was the president during the Great Depression. And well, that tells us why they're trying to steal the election. But I think between this Epstein stuff and trying to steal the election and every human in the United States paying more for what their daily life, everyone. I think at the end of that day, what we're actually going to see is we're going to get to decide who we are as a nation. And when we decide who we are as a nation, we are going to speak loud. And I don't think it's going to be nearly the fight. And I do think you end up with nationalized healthcare, education. I think that civil rights are firmed up. I think that speech is going to be changed just a little bit to not allow you to do a coup on the government. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to be fine. Soon, but not as soon as I want. Don't think everything you see in front of you isn't running a pattern that ends running into a wall, because it still does. Peace out.
Did you see this video out of Los Angeles where ICE agents violently detained TikToker Tatiana Martinez? Now, I can't show you the full video for fear that it'll be taken down, but let me show you some of what happened. That was absolutely horrible. This happened to Tatiana on August 15th as she was leaving the garage of her home. And according to reports, no warrants were presented to her, which is leading people to believe that she was targeted because of the work she does online, helping the immigrant community know what's going on and stay safe. And of course, right-wingers online are already spewing their mis and disinformation saying that Tatiana is an undocumented immigrant, which that has not been proven, and that she's alerting crazy protesters, disrupting, activities. Also going on to say that she deserves an Oscar for the performance she put on while she was being detained, even though she was badly injured and needed to be taken to White Memorial Hospital in East Los Angeles. And according to reports, she was released from the hospital but now sits at a detention center in downtown LA. And at this point, there is no comments from any ICE or DHS officials as to why she was detained. And as of this point, no major outlet has reported on what happened to Tatiana. How she was just leaving her home when these masked men surrounded her and she tried to comply with them, and you saw how they still dragged her out of the car and slammed her to the ground. Was sent to the hospital and now is facing deportation, possibly retaliation for the work she does keeping the community safe. This is still very much a developing story, so I'll bring information as it comes in. As always, please consider supporting me on here so I can continue bringing you stories like these.